All right. And at this point, I am going to put you on mute, but if you do need at any point, just click that microphone button and unmute so that you can ask a question or speak up. There we go. All right. So you should be seeing my screen, which is this session, organizing content for remote instruction. And really our focus in this session is going to be thinking about the best ways that we can organize content for our students, whether we are doing this in an online fashion or offline fashion. I'm not going to get into very specific learning management systems or tools like that, but really into the considerations you should be making in regards to that organizational structure and how to think through some of the questions that might be hanging around as you are considering, okay, what is this next step going to look like for our kiddos? My name is Eric Leck. I am our Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Educational Technology at Carbon-Lee High Intermediate Unit. I do lead a team of staff development facilitators in our Curriculum and Instruction department. And throughout this, this closure right now, I'm helping to lead our team, which is combining with our Special Programs and Services Educational Consultants team, training and consulting team, as well as Special Programs and Services facilitators to provide all of these professional learning opportunities for teachers. We're trying to put together the best opportunities possible for everyone in what we know is a very trying time and something where we all do need a little bit of support, patience, and grace in what we're doing. So I hope we can abide to that. So to get us started today, just to ask a couple of questions for you. Launching a little poll here in Zoom. This is something that you could use if you decide to use Zoom, and don't worry, tomorrow there is an intro to Zoom session for you. But just want to know what grade levels you currently teach and support so that I have an idea of who's in my room, and to know if you've previously provided either remote, online, or even homebound instruction, because there are some comparisons that we can make in those areas. So I'll give you a minute to respond to those couple of questions that I'm posting. Excellent. All right, I see I have mostly secondary teachers in the room. And it looks like a 50-50 split, a little less than 50-50 split on some of you have provided either remote, online, or homebound instruction before. So that is good information. I did see that I have one other, yeah, Danielle, you support all from K to 12. So that's certainly an important point to make, that we are going to be seeing a wide variety of teachers take on different roles and aspects here, and be leaning on supports as we move into this stage of remote learning. But again, partly to get some information from you guys and read our room, but also to show you one of the possible tools that you could use in Zoom to engage learners is to throw a quick poll out as you're getting things started, or as you're working through a session, so that you could just do a quick temperature check on the room, see how things are going. A nice, easy way to engage your students as they're possibly in this type of synchronous setting. My last question and my third question, this is something you can either add to the chat or certainly pick up your microphone, is are there any specific goals or things that you're hoping to learn in today's sessions, just so I can make sure that, you know, we're emphasizing specific points or making sure that you're getting the information you need. And remember that I did mute you, so you might have to unmute yourself if you want to pick up the microphone. All right. I gave some wait time. So I'll get into what I set up as our goals for today, and hopefully these are fair goals. I'm keeping it relatively straightforward and short, but my session goals are, first, to understand the need for clear organization when we're providing any sort of remote instruction. Thank you, Roseanne. That anything that we can give you is a big help, and certainly I want to do that. But like I said, first thing is we're going to understand that need and why it's so important to have strong organization in what we're doing for remote learning. The second piece is learn strategies and consideration for content organization. So I'm going to give you a lot of things to consider, a lot of ideas on how to make those considerations work, and give you some options, because I know everybody's a little bit different in the way that they are comfortable around technology or with the tools that they use. And I want to make sure that you have the things that you'll need to make this work for you and for your students. And finally, we're going to view some example structures and see how others have created structure to organize content and tools that they've used in that sort of organization. I am not new to online learning in any way, shape, or form. Not only did I earn both my master's and my principal certificate in online master's programs, but I taught online Spanish for, let's see, 2008, about 6 years as a kind of, I'll say it was my side gig, in addition to the teaching that I was doing face-to-face. So I've seen a variety of structures of how online learning can work, and also in ways that, you know, I've run into things that did not work as well. So certainly, if you do have questions about those, we will do that. I see some of you are looking for more information about Zoom as well. And tomorrow, I believe our midday session tomorrow is specifically that, getting started with Zoom. My coordinator for curriculum and instruction, Mike Heater, will be running that session. So there's going to be a lot of good things to learn about Zoom, but we're going to keep adding a lot more sessions on using Zoom as well as Google Hangouts, because we know a lot of you will be using that as you're engaging with your students as well. So expect that those sessions are coming, and certainly ask questions along the way too. So my first part as we get started this morning is just to talk about the why of content organization. And I specifically put this image because, you know, I know what my 7-year-old's bedroom looks like, and I'm sure, you know, whether it be a teenager, a middle schooler, or even our elementary schoolers, our students themselves are not always very organized themselves, do not necessarily have all of those executive functioning skills that they may need to really keep moving things forward as they are learning. So, and I put this in here specifically. We actually have a session coming up at the end of this week on the very specific considerations around executive functioning skills. But our students, whether they are young students, whether they are middle school students or high school students, thank you, Danielle, for posting the link for the Zoom setup session tomorrow. Our students need mental control. They need self-regulation. And in an environment like our schools, we can help provide that for them. When they are in front of us and we can provide structure for them, we can provide bell schedules, we can set our routines in our classroom, we're really helping them develop the tools that they need and examples that they need of those executive functioning skills around mental control and self-regulation. Now we're taking them out of that environment that they are used to, and really, in some cases, they might be left on their own, or depending on the support systems that are going on at home, they may have minimal support. You know, one of the things we've talked about is whether parents are available and working from home, they may not have be able to fully support their student in the learning. It may be a situation where I was interacting with a nurse earlier this week, and she said, you know, I'm a nurse and I'm here at the hospital now. My husband works in healthcare as well, and he has to be at work. So our kids are with a neighbor and her kids as well. So I would find it really difficult for her to manage 4 kids learning all at once. Certainly a relevant concern. Or what if it's grandma and grandpa that are taking care of kids, and they are maybe less familiar with technology, or, you know, they're further removed from the school setting, that they may not be the ideal support in that learning environment. So there are all kinds of environments that we need to consider that our students are in, the levels of support that they have at home, and certainly presents that need for us around content organization and making sure that we have that. And we know that if they don't have that clear structure, they don't have that clear organization for how they can go about their learning, it may result in that failure to complete tasks or to achieve competencies. So it's really going to be important that we're extremely thoughtful in what we're doing, and providing those supports that we can, providing those scaffolds and pieces that will be most helpful and clear to our students, so that they can still benefit from the structure that we would possibly give them if they were directly in front of us. So how can we support some of that executive functioning in a remote setting? Well, first is around consistency and structure. Establishing some sort of normal, and I put normal in quotation marks because, we all know that the only true normal is the setting on a dryer. But some sort of routine that can be beneficial for them at this time. And one piece of that is having some discussion within your school districts and within your schools about what expectations are for students around, how much time should they be spending on that content learning right now, whether you are doing planned instruction and trying to move students forward, whether we're giving them enrichment and review just to keep them engaged. What does that look like and what is the need right there for your school district? And that is definitely very different across all of the school districts that we've been supporting and talking to. From some school districts talking about, yes, in our course content areas, we definitely are going to continue with planned instruction, but with some of our related arts and other coursework, we're going to continue with review and enrichment. Other schools are talking about, the amount of expectation around about how many minutes worth of time students should be using without being too concerned about tracking every single minute the students are working. But knowing, they need a little bit longer time to spend on their language arts and reading. For those high school settings, having our kids that need to continue moving forward for an AP course, knowing that the College Board is going to be providing the opportunity for students to take AP exams at home this year. That's a certain need where there's going to be a higher expectation on the amount of content that we're trying to provide to students. Where in other courses, we might be considering what are the key competencies that I really need to accomplish to make sure our students are ready to move forward. It may not be, and it very likely will not be the amount of content I've covered before, but what are some of those key competencies? We need to make sure that we are extremely clear in our objectives, our needed materials and resources and scaffolds that are available to our students when we're supporting executive functioning for them. Knowing up front what key question they're trying to answer or what skill we're trying to make sure that they have by the end of that session is going to be really important, and continuing to revisit that question, considering to revisit that objective or skill or competency is going to be really important, and letting the students know upfront what are the materials and support resources that they have available to them. If you're sending home packets of paper content, where are they going to find things in those packets? How are those packets labeled so that they know they're going to go to this packet for this information? Or maybe you're providing a combination of paper resource and online resource, and in what ways is that going to help support them, and what should they have in front of them when they're ready to work through this material? And then also, what kind of scaffolds might you put in place? We know that, in good faith effort, we should be trying to differentiate for our learners. So maybe we are going to have some note guides available for students. Maybe we're going to have some Venn diagrams so that they can do some compare and contrasting. Or study guides to help them continue along in their learning. So we want to make sure that right up front that they know what are the supports that are available to them as part of the learning list that they need to complete for a specific day, week, or time frame. The third thing we need to consider, explicit instructions. When we are in front of kids, we can repeat ourselves. We can reiterate instructions. We can redirect to task pretty easily. But when students might be working asynchronously or not with us in front of them, we may find that the only chance that we get to give them instruction is through either a written set of instructions, maybe through a video set of instructions. And they may not rewatch that, or they may not reread it. So we need to be very clear and explicit and be sequential for them. Lists, bulleted lists, numbered lists are always helpful for our students so that they can almost check off the tasks as they complete them. Giving students some time management strategies and how much time that they should be spending on work is going to be helpful for them. Again, in a typical school, we might have a bell schedule that helps kind of keep us on track with that, but giving them the hey, I'm putting out this video for you to watch. It should take you about 5 to 6 minutes to watch the video. While you're doing that, you may have a note sheet put next to you as you're working on that. So they have that clear definition of this should take 5 to 6 minutes. And how much time should each kind of piece of this take? So when we break it up for them, they have a good sense of what that time management looks like. And finally, another piece that's going to help us as you are developing an organizational system, reduce the clutter, make it clean, easy to read and follow, include that sequential logical order for students. Having too many pieces going on the puzzle, too much maybe clutter on the sides or images and things like that that might distract them, could lead to them getting off task or away from the central mission of what they're trying to complete. So again, these are all just things to consider as you're thinking about that organization. Any questions about that support for executive functioning once we get away from our students? Excellent. So now I'm going to take us into just some things to consider as we are actually going through our planning. So my first, my very first consideration is begin with the end in mind. I go right to thinking about our 7 habits for being successful, and begin with the end in mind is always an important one. We know that as teachers, as we lesson plan, as we unit plan, we really should be kind of working on that backwards design and thinking about the end. And one thing that I could suggest here, and as Pennsylvania teachers, you might groan a little bit as I say this, but this might be a place where we can lean on our SAS portal to get the essential questions that are important, or to know what competencies we are leaning toward for our students. I know as we move into our next stage of the way our students might be learning, it may not be a stage where we are going in as deep as we used to our content. I said this in the last hour. I've said it many times over the last couple of days. When it comes to our content, less is going to be more. When it comes to engagement, more is going to be better. So I'm going to jump quick to the SAS portal. Just point out an area where you can jump to just to help you as you're framing what are the key competencies or essential questions I could use to organize my lessons. Are you all seeing the SAS portal right now? I kind of jumped really quickly. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it loaded for everyone. And the place that I would jump to if I went to the SAS portal, I'm going to click my menu and go right into curriculum framework. Again, if this isn't an area, or if you haven't visited our SAS portal in a while, it may be different than what it used to look like to you. There is a lot more in it than there used to be. So I want to make sure that you can see where I'm going. Curriculum framework is a great place to go to grab some of those big ideas, competencies, and essential questions across all of our subject areas. So I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to just jump into science for now. And maybe we are looking at a life science curriculum. And like I said, as we jump into this, you'll see that it breaks down all of our standards. And certainly our standards are really important, but it breaks down those essential questions and competencies that we may be looking for our students. And as I talk about making sure that you lead with that objective for your students, lead with a strong competency so that they know what they're trying to get at, that might be the piece that you need to reiterate for students. This is what we're trying to make sure that you understand how to do. This is what I want to know that you can complete by the end of this learning unit, this learning structure that we're going on through. Maybe it's one day, maybe it's a couple of days, maybe it's a whole week, but we're going to use these type of questions from essential questions and competencies to help determine if you're ready to move on. And like I said, it may be a situation where we're getting to a pass-fail and we're just making sure that they can get to that competency rather than giving them a notation or numerical grade around that competency. So like I said, whether you're looking at a science framework or a math framework, my grade 8 math. The curriculum frameworks really do a nice job of breaking down the essential questions and competencies for you that can help lead that organization for students. You may need to reword it to make it more student-friendly language, but certainly want to use that as a great way and a great place to start in your organization and leading with those objectives. And again, then we know that we're meeting, especially if we're going for planned instruction, we know that we're kind of pushing forward with our standards and what we need. All right. So again, take us back to that SAS portal for a good way to get us moving forward and to frame what we're doing. Again, in the SAS portal, in the menu, curriculum frameworks. The second piece, remember to take a step-by-step approach. This is the same type of approach that you would take in the classroom, but think about how you might ask an engaging question to get students started with their work. Maybe you're going to ask them to journal a little bit so that they're doing a little bit of writing practice. Maybe you are going to be using a Google Classroom where you pose an interesting question or an engaging question for them. Maybe you're going to give them a quick review activity to review a task or skill that'll help lead them into the new skill. But any of those sorts of things that you might be providing, make sure that that's part of a routine so that as they're getting into a new learning environment, the way you organize is going to keep going in the same routine. So always think about how you're going to engage first and then give that sequential lesson content. Maybe you're giving some key lesson materials, and whether they be paper materials that you're asking students to read, whether you're giving them an option to watch a video that you've created in a screencast, maybe you're pulling a video from Khan Academy or CK12 or some sort of lesson material, or maybe you're giving students 2 or 3 options. Here's an option of a video, here's an option of a reading activity. Please do at least one of these 2 options so that you can understand the content. Or maybe it's one of these live type sessions where you're giving them an option to go in live and learn that lesson. But make sure that they know that that's part of the sequential lesson content. There might be a learning activity, a reinforcement and practice activity, and then what is that expectation for showing the competency? What is that thing that they're going to have to do to provide evidence that they've completed it? And in the case of this remote learning, multiple choice may not cut it. It may be too easy for them, or it might be too Googleable for them. So how can we provide them with ways to show their learning, whether maybe they're taking videos using a tool like FlipGrid to explain their learning. Maybe they're using pen and paper writing, and they're going to submit that either virtually or through another mechanism that your schools are setting up to deliver and collect work. Maybe it's going to be through a Google Classroom, but some way to show that competency and give opportunity for feedback. One key and one piece in our engagement with students right now is the way that we are working to provide them with feedback on what they're doing and engaging them in that process. Like I said, just kind of pushing forward with content isn't always going to get the best results now. We're going to need to make sure we're engaging with our kids, letting them know we're there for them, really, really digging into the learning that they're doing. And like I said, that may mean that they are spending less time than they would if we were in a traditional classroom setting, which may give you a little bit more time as far as being able to provide that really high quality feedback. Last piece in that step-by-step approach, make sure that there are clear links to resources or what resources they might have in their packet to access. Using color coding or other specific coding to help them know what they should be doing next is going to be really important for that organization system. And of course, I always want you to consider, what are the multiple means of access? We know that there is definitely an equity gap in what types of access our students have, whether that be an equity gap in their access to a computer, access to Wi-Fi, access to online learning, whether that's access to language because they're English learners and we need to make sure we're providing a specific support or option for them, whether they might need a little additional learning support or maybe a one-on-one check-in because that's part of an IEP. Those are all things that we want to make sure we're considering. If we are giving a video or we're giving something that's in audio format, we want to make sure that there is a script for that, or there is captioning, so that students that might need that accessibility have it. And many of the tools that are available to us, our Khan Academies, even YouTube has not always perfect, but has that closed captioning available to them. If you are providing a piece of instruction and maybe you've created a video, it would be a great idea to provide at least some summary notes of that video for a student that might need to see it as well as hear it at the same time. So multiple means of access are going to be really important here, so that we are working to provide that equitable learning environment, or as equitable as possible, with good faith effort. Any questions on those considerations for planning? Any other thoughts that you have in regards to some of the considerations around planning? Check our chat box as well, if there's any ideas there. Okay. Now I'm going to keep moving forward. Some more questions to think about. And again, I know I'm putting a lot of questions out there, but I want these to be considerations in the front of your mind as you are working to organize content. So what are the expectations for your students at this time? And this may be a greater conversation than just you. What is the expectation from your school district? And the three key terms that we are really working with our school districts to use in this time. First is continuity of instruction, and that is, what is that plan for continuing to provide instruction for students and continuity of learning? The second is planned instruction. Planned instruction is that instruction which is meant to continue moving students forward with whatever standards and goals they may have for their learning. So that's really that idea of keeping students progressing. And then the third is the use of enrichment and review. And that's really about keeping kids engaged in their learning. We are hearing from a lot of school districts that they're leaning toward either a situation of purely enrichment and review, or a combination of planned instruction as well as planned instruction and I apologize, enrichment and review. Keep losing words today. So as you're thinking about those things, what is that expectation from your school district, and what plan they're moving forward with? And then when you have that expectation, yes, we're doing planned instruction and we're trying to move forward. What is equitable, fair, and reasonable? How much is fair to ask from our students right now and their families as they're trying to move forward with learning? Knowing support systems that are in place, knowing the possible access issues that may be impeding their efforts. So I think that's an important piece. Again, I keep saying, and I will continue to reiterate, in the line of content, less is more. In the line of engagement, more is better. Some of our students right now, the biggest thing that they could benefit from is just connection to others, and knowing that there are people around them. Another question to think about is, what does access look like for your students? Many students may have access to the internet at home and may have access to a computer, but it might be one computer for 2 or 3 kids at home, which may mean the amount of time they get to use that for their learning is going to be limited. So that's something to consider, especially if you're in a district where you aren't able to distribute devices to those kids. Maybe there is no access to the internet or to Wi-Fi at home. We know a lot of cable and internet companies are providing free access right now if students haven't had it before. But there's always little pro quos in there. We're learning that, if a person had a previous account and maybe it's in arrears, companies are not as forgiving to just provide free access. So that's something to be considerate of and understanding of. What does differentiation look like, and what are the IEP needs of students? And what does that mean when we move to a more remote instruction environment? That student that may have worked with an aide or had some one-on-one assistance may not have that one-on-one right next to them, but maybe that could be a check-in with an aide. Maybe that's a check-in with the teacher that's more individualized. Again, same idea around reading levels on materials or providing study guides and things like that. Those are going to need to be very clearly provided so that those students have them. Same thing around English language development and the possible needs that those students would have, or even the products that they produce. Maybe we're asking for more of an oral presentation from an English language student as a product versus a written presentation for other students. Again, just trying to make sure we're getting to the competencies now. What about our GIEPs, our gifted students that really do need extension? Dave, that is a really good question. Thanks for putting that into the chat. So how do we deal with students who have IEPs? Right now, again, we continue to reiterate that you should be making your best faith effort to abide to the level that you can for online learning or for remote instruction for those IEP students. There are certain things that can certainly be included or become part of online instruction that actually make some of this even easier in some cases. Just as an example, the option to have things read to students. There are a number of screen readers or text readers that can be enabled on computers that will read aloud to students. I believe Danielle and Carly are going to be offering a session about Google extensions for accessibility. And those are some of the things that they're going to talk about, some of those tools that are available that'll make things more accessible to the students. Same thing around the expectations around assessment. We want to make sure we're abiding to IEPs in that way. Frequent redirection, things like that. If we're doing live sessions, checking in with those kids that you know you need to check in with, or giving them opportunities for office hours or tutoring sessions. In this new kind of approach that you might be taking to learning, your schedule as a teacher may be different, and that may provide some opportunities for you to have some more one-on-one sessions with students as necessary. And that might be through a Zoom session, a Google Hangout, or even a simple phone call, just to have some of those check-ins with them. There are certainly other services that we've been talking to our school districts about their way that they're providing services through telepractices and things like that. But again, there might be some services that are just impossible to meet, and that shouldn't stop us from trying to provide some sort of instruction. One of the things that we've heard not only from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, but from the U.S. Department of Education is don't allow the hangups that might occur as we're thinking about the legalities of an IEP or an EL student or a GIEP stop us from providing or attempting to provide instruction for students, whether it be enrichment and review or planned instruction. The best thing we can do for kids is to engage them in some way and do the best that we can in good faith efforts to do that. So again, depending on those needs for those students, there are certainly tools out there that could help support those needs. And it may take a little bit of discussion amongst teams and working with special ed directors or EL teachers or other resources you have in your district that are going to help come up with some of those solutions, and keep checking in sessions like this where we can talk about some of the ways that we're providing for different students. But there are a number of ways out there. It's just, we need to think them through as we're using different modalities to reach our kids. And we may certainly find that there are some kids we can just never reach, no matter how much we try, no matter how much we do. But again, the goal here is put that good faith effort in and know that you're doing the best you can for as many kids as you can right now. So getting beyond some of those, how are you going to connect with your students? It might be through live sessions like this, using a Zoom, using a Google Hangout. If you're a Microsoft school, you might be using Microsoft Teams. If you use Schoology has an internal system to use as well. So there's a lot of ways to connect to students through live sessions. Maybe it's doing other types of check-ins. If you're a Google Classroom teacher, you might be checking in by using polls or quick questions in class, just to see how kids are doing, how they're managing, how they're preparing for the learning that's going on and how they're handling it. You may find that some students struggle more in this sort of setting, and other students may thrive when they have that opportunity to learn asynchronously and independently. So again, you may find students that might have struggled in class before have an opportunity to show off something that you didn't see before. So we can certainly use that. You might be reaching out through the phone. You might be providing, working with other teachers, doing some co-teaching to provide additional supports. So a lot of ways to connect with your students, but make sure that you're thinking about those ways you're connecting. And finally, or not finally, fourth, how are you going to provide meaningful feedback? Again, if progress isn't measured by numerical grades, what we need to really think about is seeing the work that students are submitting, letting them know what that shows you about where they are, and letting them know how they can continue to move forward. And that feedback might come through, if you're working on a Google Doc and that student has submitted a writing assignment, it might be through commenting on that Google Doc for the student. If they are providing an assignment where you can give them verbal feedback, there's a great tool called FlipGrid where you can do a quick video of yourself and provide that feedback to a student in that way. But it's going to be up to us to really look at the ways that we are providing some meaningful feedback to help students know that they're ready to move on or how they can take things to the next level. For those of you that sometimes wish that you can get a little deeper into a topic, this might give you an opportunity to really push a kid to go a little deeper into their learning as other students are making progress across a competency or objective that you have for them. And finally, and this is a very, very important consideration right now, is how are you considering your students' social emotional learning needs? As we're moving into this phase where kids are kind of cooped up, they're not able to interact with their peers well. They might have a lot of questions about what's going on around them and how this is going to affect them. Keeping that in mind, in addition to the content that you might need to cover, is going to be really important. Spending that time just talking to your kids and letting them have an outlet to be social with some of their peers is going to be sometimes paramount in this situation. Why I keep going back to, content may not always be the forefront of what you're doing right now. So I just want you to kind of keep that in mind, and you'll see over the next week or so, we're going to be offering a number of sessions on ways that you can consider the way that this situation is creating a new component of trauma for kids and how we could help them work through some of that as their classroom teachers. We certainly aren't their mental health counselors, but we can certainly provide them with some opportunities just to have an outlet with their own peers and have some discussion around things that is fair to them. Any thoughts on some of these questions? Any ideas? Any other questions from you? Any concerns that this raises?
I like the part, Eric, you said just about the feedback. A simple, you mentioned, is it FlipGrid? Is that what that's like? Yep. A verbal feedback?
FlipGrid is a great tool it actually lets you open like a video that you can do a quick 30-second snippet to a kid or to a class, and they can kind of feedback on each other. So it's a really great tool. It's one we're going to be offering a session on next week. So it's a great little tool to do for feedback or even to allow for students to show product of learning so that they can explain what they've learned and almost create a discussion with other kids in an asynchronous format. So you don't have to be in that live Zoom session, but yet they can still work in that kind of oral presentation mode rather than have everything through writing, which helps with some of our IEP or EL students.
I imagine it's something that you can put onto Google Classroom, the FlipGrid?
Yes, absolutely. You would be able to link directly to that FlipGrid from Google Classroom. I believe they actually have an integration too that you can actually integrate it right into your Google Classroom. A lot of these tools right now do. That's why I think using Google Classroom is a great route to go if you have access to it. If you, for example, use CK12 or Khan Academy, there's a way to just push things right to Google Classroom. So FlipGrid, I believe, does that. If not, it provides a link that you can just post in your Google Classroom to get it to students.
Great.
Other questions, things that you're thinking about from this list here? I know it's not the easiest task. There's a lot of considerations to make as you're planning and preparing for this new task. So certainly, you know, as those questions arise, bring them up. So I finally wanted to show you just a few organizational strategies that I've seen work and I've seen help students. And my suggestion to you is, when you kind of look at these and as you're considering them, once you select one, stick to it. It's kind of like your classroom routine. Once you have a classroom routine that's working in the building with face-to-face instruction, you stick to it, because then the students become accustomed to that routine and can keep moving forward pretty easily. However, if you switch it up all the time and kids aren't used to the routines that you're doing, it sometimes creates chaos and lack of cohesion. So the first one is what we call the 5E model. And the E's are, of course, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate. And you can kind of block it out. And the way that it's showing here on the screen is it shows you from the teacher perspective what you would do in each of these blocks. But you would put the instruction in the blocks and maybe the links to the tools that students could use. So this could be done. You can create this sort of chart in a Word document using a spreadsheet tool, maybe using Google Docs itself. And again, leading students through the first E, we're going to ask them that engaging question to get them started with their lesson, maybe ask them something that they should have known from before to engage their minds around the topic that you're moving into. All of those sorts of things, and some tools that you might use for that. Like I said, a Google Classroom question might be a great tool for that. Mentimeter is a nice tool to do a quick question to students. Or maybe if you're just doing pen and paper, it's a start with a question here that they might journal about and just jot some notes in about in sort of a scaffolded note sheet. And then it's going to ask them to explore some topics. And this might be them doing some research, watching videos, reading, going out and crowdsourcing. You know, maybe they're going to reach out through different networks to get some information to help them learn that new topic. Third is an explain time. So this is where teacher direct instruction steps in. Maybe that becomes a live synchronous session. Of course, we want to try to record those if possible for kids that can't make it at the time that you offer it, or provide some video lessons, some instructions, some modeling, some scaffolding. Or again, if we're sending home paper, there might be those examples that you walk them through and you kind of show them the step-by-steps of how that works. Again, a number of tools that could be used for that as you're talking about the explain mode. Finally, next there's the elaborate. That's where we're making connections. We're helping students reinforce that concept. This is where we can do some quick formative assessment on students, and where you might use a Quizlet or even a quick quiz in Google Forms, just to check their understanding and see if they're seeing the connections they need to make before they move into a final exhibit of whatever the tool or resource, whatever the competency that you want them to attain is. And then again, you finally get to those evaluate areas where you can decide on that evaluation, whether it be a video reflection, exit tickets, a writing assignment, all of those pieces. So again, the structure you see here is not the way you would present it to students. This is to help you as the teacher. And when I provide you with the slideshow at the end, I did include a link that explains a little bit more and goes more in depth into the elements. It gives you a place to jump in and use this template if you want to use the template. And of course, a quick video for a set of videos for you to work through each of those 5 E's and suggestions on how you could use that. So again, a lot of nice templates for you to use if that's something you choose. So I'll have that link for you and that resource for you at the end of the session here, but certainly something that can be one example of an organizational strategy. So another one, and I saw somebody comment about this earlier, and this is one of my favorite things to do for students, is to give them choice boards. Choice boards, one, help us in differentiation because they allow students to make the decisions that will benefit them the most. And it gives you the opportunity as a teacher to provide a variety of modes and modalities that might help your students. So in a choice board, you might be able to give some digital opportunities and non-digital opportunities all around the same learning concept. And maybe the choice board is one where you say, do at least one of the tasks from row 1 first, and that's going to be an engaged task. So you can almost take that 5E model and turn it into a choice board. And then in number 2, I need you to do one of these options or 2 of these options to complete it. And in number 3, you do 3. If we're doing a choice board in that way, we can provide it electronically with links and all the resources students need, and they can continue working through it. We know that even in face-to-face instruction, we often send home choice boards as homework for students. So there's no reason not to take advantage of that in an online setting in that sort of option. Again, very similarly, I provided some resources for you. An external resource to show you a little bit more about using e-learning choice boards and how to create those and put those links in. Make sure that you're using things that can integrate with whatever tools that you are using. So certainly a great way. You're going to see the term hyperdocs comes up a lot. Basically, a hyperdoc is a document where you put in a lot of links and resources that students can very easily use that one document to get to all the pieces they need. So you're going to see that referenced quite a bit in online learning. I will let you know, and I'm not going to go deep into choice boards today because tomorrow morning, the first session in the morning is specifically about using choice boards. So I encourage you that if you want to learn more about using choice boards, jump in with Carly and Rosemary tomorrow morning. They're going to be going much more in depth into how to create and use choice boards with your students. Another great way, especially as we move into remote instruction, is to create a playlist for that organization. And that's really, again, going back to the step-by-step. So as much as we can break things down into ordered lists for our students and what they need to do, places for them to keep notes. If, again, we can add hyperlinks and pieces like that, so that students can keep track of what they are doing. But those playlists could help, again, your students work through one piece at a time so that till they can get to the very end. And throughout that playlist, you might give options, you might give more specific instructions within each part. You see that this playlist has a column for the activity, a column for the specific instructions, including those links that they might need or the resources they need there. A place to add notes, and a place to mark off when it's completed and finished. Of course, we always lead with additional instructions as well in those playlists for organization. Again, I'll lead you out to a tool that gives you some more resources around playlists. And these is a great place to add some differentiation into what you're doing. You can give students options through those playlists or create differentiated playlists for different students that you might have in a classroom. Can-do descriptors for your ESL students can be part of those playlists as well. So this really goes through those playlists. Some additional samples are here. I, of course, pulled one of the images, but you'll see that there are some other great playlists that you can work from. And of course, there's going to be a template for you to use to create your own playlist if you wanted to use playlists instead. So I just wanted to show you some good examples of ways that if you're moving into this remote environment, ways that you can organize for your students. Again, whether you're using Google tools, whether you're using Microsoft Office and creating a Word document, this is something that anybody can create to help keep their kids organized and really focused on the tasks at hand. So, getting close to the end of our time, believe it or not, do you have other ideas or suggestions or things that you've seen that you'd like to kind of add to the table, or questions that you have before we are at the end of our time? hearing some typing going on, so hopefully that means someone's putting into the chat. Yes, you're welcome, Roseanne. I know definitely a lot of planning to put in, a lot of time to put in, and some homework to do on teachers' end. We've been really advocating to our schools that teachers will need time. Just like our students are going to need time to get used to a new modality of instruction, our teachers are going to need time to prepare for that. And I know many of them are trying to be thoughtful of that and how they're going to make sure they're giving you credit for that time as part of your kind of work calendar and things like that. So it's definitely a new realm for everybody. So I just ask you all to provide a little bit of patience and grace to your leadership as well as they're trying to figure out the logistical end of this piece. But it's certainly, I appreciate having a lot of teachers already jump into these PD sessions before they've been asked to by their administrators, just to start thinking about what they can do that's the next best thing for kids. All right. So, as I said at the beginning, our session goals were to understand the need for that clear organization and why it's so important for our kids. So hopefully I brought you into the topic with really, talking about those executive functioning needs that our kids have and ways that we provide that we don't realize we provide it when it's face-to-face, and how we're going to have to make that consideration moving forward. I put some questions out there for you and some strategies to think about as you are making your organizational decisions. I do encourage you that as you make a decision, stick to it. Create that structure, create some sort of consistency for your students. And then I gave you some example structures, and I promise you those are not the only 3 out there, but I think they were 3 reasonable ones and ones that you can take on pretty well. I really love using that 5E concept and then being able to create some sort of playlist or choice board out of that 5E concept. So, ways that they can kind of merge together. And I do have a closing thought for you. Just remember, in this time, as we're moving forward, as we're trying to make the next best steps for kids, there are things that are within your control and there are things that are going to be out of your control. So make sure we focus on the things that we can control and the best efforts we can do for our kids. Having that positive attitude, knowing when you need to step away from the work piece and take care of yourself, putting kindness and grace and patience forward as we're moving forward in what we're doing. Sometimes walking away from the news and turning off the social media so that you can get the negative things away from you, and knowing that you can take care of yourself in that way, because you're not gonna be able to do the best for your kids if you're not taking care of yourself well. So I do want to keep you with that thought, and just remember to focus on the things that you can control and not how much toilet paper is at the store. As much as it can sometimes get us down a rabbit hole of negativity, hopefully we can focus on the positives and the things that we can control. One of the things that we said that might result from this entire process is, as teachers, we may look at our practices differently, and it may change the way we do our practices in a regular setting. So again, look at the ways that this might positively impact your future teaching as well. Even though we're being brought into it in a crunch time and in a very stressful way, it can lead to something that's really positive. So to finish up for today, first, remember to continue checking back on our professional development page. Roseanne, that's actually a great comment, because I've said to my team, I said, this is going to open a door, and I think I will love to be able to continue to provide this type of professional development even outside of this. So thank you. Second, I do have, like I said, keep checking the calendar. We're going to be adding to it very soon for next week so that you can jump into sessions next week. Know that we'll be posting recordings as well. So as soon as recordings are ready and we can put those resources out there for you, we will. Exit ticket for this session is here. I'm going to do a quick exit so I can copy and paste it and put it into our chat box. If you are seeking Act 48 hours, I'm just going to ask that you make sure you complete the information to give us your name and your PPID so that we can give you Act 48 for this. I did put into the chat box a link to that exit ticket. The other piece of the exit ticket is it gives us a lot of feedback so that we know if we can improve our practices in providing online professional development. I ask you to remember that our team, this is going to be new to a lot of us in providing professional development. So certainly that feedback will be helpful to us in honing our own practices. If you do have questions, if you do have needs, whether you're in my CLIU region or whether you're outside, I keep telling people this is the time as educators we need to be together. We need to be collaborating. We need to be helping each other. So please feel free to reach out. I can tell you I do get a ton of email right now, so I may not be super fast to respond, but I do read those messages and I try to respond as quickly as I can. But like I said, I always ask for a little bit of patience and grace, especially in a time like this. But if there's anything else you need, please let us know. We have a suggestion form right on our website that you can give us suggestions for additional sessions that you need, things that are really pressing on you that you want to talk about, or just, hey, I'm looking for a resource. Can you direct me in the right direction? That's what we would love to do to help you out and make sure that you have the tools that you need. We don't want teachers to be out there on their own during this time. So with that said, I am done with my session, but you guys can, of course, add any additional questions, chat, or whatever. I'll leave this open for a couple minutes. I am going to stop the recording, though. And that way, if you do have additional questions, certainly you can do those now.
Thanks, Eric.
You are welcome. Thank you for joining in.